gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for November 6th, 2023. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, Call of Duty's campaign seems real bad, but how about that Like a Dragon Gaiden? But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's Lex Luddy, everybody. Lexi, how are you doing?
Well, I'm not doing too bad. My two teams are top of the league in the European rugby, so I'm not going to complain. Despite neither of them playing particularly well, top of the league. I love leagues.
Yeah, it's Red Wings were doing pretty okay coming out of the season. They had like a 5-game win streak there, and they're actually much better than I was expecting, but I'm getting my hopes up in a bad way, and I don't think it's going to last. We'll see.
Oh, yeah. The team I support most, Munster, who are like the team for Cork and the surrounding areas, they won the league last year with no right to win the league. They had one of the worst starts to it.
Good,
and now
good
everyone's
classic.
like, oh, they're going to do it again. They're going to do the double. I was like, fucking no. No chance in fucking hell.
Do you want to upset a sports fan base with me?
Yeah, sure. I love doing that.
So rugby, and hockey and soccer. Like, I get these sports. I don't know if I get lacrosse, because it seems like you could put the ball in the stick and just walk. You could just walk towards the goal. And who's gonna? They can try to stop you, but it looks like they mostly don't try to stop you. I don't get it.
It's a sport for rich people. They don't like challenges being put in their way.
I need Michael Hardy to come explain this to me.
Take time off your honeymoon, Mike. We have some important questions to ask you.
We should call him right now. Wake up, Mahardy. Okay, my other thing is, Octo in chat says that he hates daylight savings. Well, I got great news for you. It's over. And that's Jeff Grubb's pedantic moment of the day. Da, 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 da. I'm sorry. It's I don't know why it's a pet peeve. Really, I'm a terrible person is probably why it's my pet peeve. It's over. Daylight savings is over. So happy.
It really fucked me up that last week this show was on an hour earlier. For me, that was not okay. I ruined my schedule massively. I will also say, before we go any further into the news, I just want to shout out Start Menu, my website. We're doing our annual Winter Spectacular. Just announced this on Twitter 2 hours ago. It's kind of a thing that was inspired by a lot of Giant Bomb's winter festivities. It's a writing jam designed to get a bunch of people in the community into writing things for the end of the year, game of the year list, retrospectives, basically anything you want. But we try to get as many people to try stuff as possible. And to do that, we get guests involved, and we try to, put people's work up next to people who have been in the industry for a long time, and everyone gets to have their work on the front page of the site and shown off. So I'll definitely be hitting up some people around the GB community over the next few days about if they'd be interested in giving some advice or anything, because we have stuff like advice pieces, game of the year list, loads of stuff. But yeah, go check that out on the Twitter at the Start Menu. Not Start Menu, that is a random woman from Middle America who I was linking to as my employer for several months.
Well, that's fun. Hey, listen, no one's gonna check. You're all right. Yeah, everyone's it's a website. Okay, cool. Then we're good. It's startmenu.co.uk. That's where people go.
Yes. Okay.
Excellent. All right. You know what? Let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings, or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 campaign review roundup. Leah J. Williams over at Game Hub did the rounding up for us. I appreciate that.
This is another 10 out of 10 banger.
Yeah, let's find out. Yeah. I don't know. Let's find out together.
Okay.
The single player campaign for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 has seemingly failed to live up to player expectations. What? With early reviews for the adventure notably trending negative. It appears much of the criticism stems from its short length. Well, that sounds like a bonus to me. It reportedly takes around 3 to 6 hours to complete, but the conversation also includes talk of dull missions and thin storytelling. I've heard people be like, yeah, it's short, but it's also a slog somehow still. So it's like, okay. IGN gave it a 4 out of 10. Simon Cardy over there wrote that it's shallow, dull, and plays less like the greatest hits and more like underbaked cover versions of missions past. It's too busy looking back at former glories rather than focusing on making any new moments worth remembering. Wrapped up in a borderline incoherent story with nothing to say. The only part we haven't seen in a campaign before fall flat, bizarrely cobbling together pieces of the Warzone mode into actively bad sandbox missions, abandoning all of what made Call of Duty so great at its peak and instead delivering a dull string of missions that amount to a thoroughly disappointing handful of hours. I haven't been paying too close attention to this campaign. I'm mostly just been like, oh, wow, they got a campaign again? I thought they were going to have anything this year, so that's interesting. Like, this explains it. They're doing open zone gameplay. They're stealing Sonic Frontiers thing, and they're taking the Warzone map and using those as these, like, sandbox open thing. Really just like, what can we make happen in this space so we don't have to make a whole new level? Yeah. One side of me says, it's pretty clever. The other side says to me, this is the biggest media property in the fucking world. What are you doing? We got more reviews here, but just real quick, Lexi, what's your initial reaction here?
So a thing that happens sometimes when a game is being reviewed is you'll get like messages from people who are trying to hash out their thoughts processes before they get them into like actual order and they put them eloquently. I won't say who it is, but someone who is reviewing the game sent me a message just saying, MW3 campaign, complete dog shit, like unbelievably bad. What on earth were they cooking? So I'm sure that'll be nicer by the time they actually figure it out. But yeah, this seems like something that was scrapped together in a cave with a box of scraps.
Yes, it was.
And I like it's one of those times where, like, yes, like reusing assets is fucking great. That's amazing if you can do it. Yeah, it's very clever. It saves a lot of money. We'll talk about a game that does it fantastically in a little bit.
Yes, maybe the best ever.
But like if you're just sending people into these open areas that are designed for multiplayer matches to fight AI bots and putting some story wrappings around it, and those story wrappings aren't particularly interesting, and it's very clear that this is just here to tread water until the next actual mainline game, because this wasn't meant to be Modern Warfare 3, this was meant to be DLC for 2. Like, fans of video games and people who play video games, even casually, can sniff that bullshit out. Like, people know when they're being had, and it doesn't even seem particularly convincing that this was ever meant to be anything other than a map pack that was all of the old maps. Like, that's all this seems like Modern Warfare 3 was originally planned to be, was, hey, what if we took a year off and instead took it easy and did all the old maps that you all like? Which probably would have been a great fucking hit for them, because people love that old shit and they're eating that old shit up. But like, now there's this narrative around this game of it being a lazy, like, cash-in. Doesn't matter how much they've changed the movement, doesn't matter how much they've like improved things on the multiplayer end.
Lexi, we might have lost you. Lexi, if you need to restart, go ahead. I will handle it from here.
As a independent company, just trying
Lexi, we lost you for a second.
Get as much money out of Call of Duty.
It looks like we got a pretty big lag right now. How's your connection?
I can hear you fine.
Oh, no, we're back. We're back and good now. Okay, fantastic. Okay. Yeah, you just dropped out there for about 5 seconds. But I think
everyone.
We're back in business. Real quick, let's get to what Kotaku said. Claire Jackson said Call of Duty's Modern Warfare 3's campaign is a skeletal framework of a game that could have and should have been much better than what it presently is. Its attempts to divorce itself from the more linear traditions of Call of Duty campaigns, while interesting in concept, mostly fail in execution. The game flirts with interesting, even promising concepts, but it fails to stick with the landing with its narrative or gameplay, leading to a hollow feeling conclusion. Kodaku doesn't have a score for it. Games Radar also doesn't have a score yet. But Leon Hurley over there says, I'm not entirely sure what to make of Modern Warfare 3's campaign. It's not terrible, but it's also far from great. Lacking any real big set pieces and at times feeling like it's been assembled from a Warzone construction kit of pre-made pieces. I think we can assume that's exactly what did happen.
A box of scraps.
Yes, a box of scraps. And then GameSpot's 5 out of 10 from writer Essie Doster says Modern Warfare 3 sparks a hot opening with an early reveal of Makarov, but the introduction of the new open combat missions disrupts the story's pace for a fizzled out ending. However, after this hyped opening mission, Modern Warfare 3 immediately stumbles as you're forced to play 2 of the game's new open combat missions back to back. So it just sounds exactly what everyone said. Like, it seems like there's not going to be enough time, and then what you said, you diagnosed it properly. I think they just did the bare minimum they could to sell a $70 game, and here we are. This game's probably not going to pay the price for this too much, right? That's not usually how this works for a big, massive game. It would be the next one.
It will sell great. It will sell just as well. And like, they've done all their pre-orders, and this game has been pushing fucking hard on the pre-orders with the marketing campaign they've been going. Like, they've probably already sold the amount of copies they were going to sell no matter what. And you wonder what next year's Call of Duty looks like. Does Microsoft come in and say, hey, listen, we can't have a situation like this again where your community is this unhappy with the biggest media property we now own, and like, you have to take a year off? Do we see Microsoft like literally just put the brakes on the whole thing? I also think it's super fucking unfair for a team like Sledgehammer, who have been given the short end of the stick several times on the Call of Duty train
after making a couple of really good Call of Duty games on their own.
Yeah, and now like, we all know that these Call of Duty games are made by committee. They're made by several development teams. But it's Sledgehammer's name on the splash screen here. It's their reputation, and like, that must feel fucking terrible.
Yep, it's for these studios. I mean, at this point, they really must just feel like a cog in the machine. There was a time when there was like a huge amount of the studio's identity put into these games. That's obviously over with. And I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if next year they probably will have a game ready to go next year, because just the way the scheduling's worked out and the way that they have these things going in parallel, they'll probably have the one next year ready to go, and maybe even the year after that.
Do you think it will be a different franchise?
I mean, it's not going to be Modern Warfare again. They won't do that again. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Black Ops, if they go back to that. I mean, I know Black Ops 4 or whatever the last Black Ops one was really not liked by the community either. But that name still has a lot of sway, and people still really like it. And they're like, well, we're doing Black Ops right this time. Could really work. I don't know which studio's up next. So if this is this is Modern Warfare 3. So 2 years ago would have been Infinity Ward, and then was Modern Warfare 2 Infinity Ward again? I don't know. It feels like Treyarch. I don't know where Treyarch is at in all this. So I bet the next one is Treyarch, and that could easily be.
It's Toys for Bob.
Toys for Bob's next Call of Duty game. So yeah, I think they'll probably have a Call of Duty for the next couple of years, but I wouldn't be surprised if within the next 3-4 years they do finally start taking a year off here and there. I don't think it'll be an every other year series for quite some time, but I think it could be, well, we're going to do 2 in a row and then we'll take a break and then we'll come back. That could happen, especially with Warzone continuing to be so popular. And if they lean on that, that could fill in the gap in a really strong way. We'll see. This is going to be the best selling game of the year, though. So 5 out of 10 from GameSpot, 4 out of 10 from IGN, best selling game of the year. Like a Dragon Gaiden, meanwhile, the man who erased his name, we got a review roundup here. Right now it has a 79 on PS5 on Metacritic. Josh Broadwell at VG247 gave it a 5 out of 5, said, my big takeaway from Like a Dragon Gaiden is that I really hope RGG does more side stories in the future, or at least takes a similar approach to new mainline games. The chance to slow down and experiment with character growth, different storytelling styles, and a more focused approach to narrative building paid off brilliantly with Joyu's. Is that how I say that?
Joyu. Yeah, Joyu.
Joyu's Tight Tale. Meanwhile, Willow Rowe at Inverse gave it a 7 out of 10 and said, like A Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name, goes back on much of this forward momentum and seeks to latch onto what fans loved about the previous era of the franchise. While it retains the wonderfully designed mini-games and impressively realized city streets of its fictionalized locales, the need to live in the past holds it back. Kazuma Kiryu's presence is the most concerning, as the story fails to justify why it needs to keep bringing Kiryu out. Every time Kiryu gets out, will he get pulled back in? Maybe they'll finally stuff him out for real in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Okay. You are the most Yakuza-pilled person I know, and you played this game. You reviewed it, right? Did you finish it and review it? Okay,
yes.
so tell us people about that, what you're thinking.
I reviewed it for Shack News. I gave it 9 out of 10. I went into this game actually with pretty tempered expectations. I previewed it, and the word that I was hearing from other people who had interviewed them was that a lot of it was like repeatable content in a Coliseum area. I think this game super fucking works for what it is. It's a slightly cheaper thing. It's about $50. And it tells a really tight, cohesive story, and it delves into Kiryu in a way that we haven't seen in these games in a long time. The franchise has had a really bad habit ever since the very first game of basically like turning Kiryu into the Messiah. Like he's untouchable. Like nothing he can do is wrong, and you know he's just stoic and always the hero.
Is he baby girl?
He is also a baby girl. Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
And that's part of what makes him a baby girl. But like a big part of this game is looking at the consequences for Kiryu's actions and how they have broken him in quite a fundamental way. And just actually like sitting with his consequences for a bit, because usually it's just like, oh, I sacrificed this. Anyway, moving on. And it's never really delved on. This has one of the best performances from Kiryu's actor. I forget his name now off the top of my head. There's some scenes in it where... Yeah. Not... The English dub is in there for the Infinite Wealth demo, which I haven't played yet, but...
No comment. Yeah.
Yeah, no comment. Get paid.
Do your thing, whatever.
But yeah, I think the Japanese performances in this are really fucking good. They're some of the best in a game this year. And I also think that the game does a great job at balancing its combat in a way that RGG have struggled for a long time. A lot of the time when they try to do these faster combat styles, you just don't do enough damage, and it never feels great when you're fighting big swaths of enemies or enemies with big health bars. In this game, they have a new style that really allows you to control a crowd in a way that you can't in previous games, and it focuses on these bigger encounters. There are encounters where it'll be like 10 versus 20 people, and you're just fucking all slamming at each other, and it actually feels really good. I also think that like the side content that is there is all really good. It's a shorter game. It's only about 10 hours if you beeline it. I did everything at about 25 hours. Like literally everything, like every side mission.
If I play this game, do you think it would be like, I've played some Yakuza, and I played, I don't know, 5-ish hours of Zero. I liked what I played. I wish I could get back to it and play more. Do you think this would whet my appetite, or do you think this would be a misrepresentation of what is really good about the franchise?
I think it's a lot of the things that the franchise done at its very best.
Okay.
I think that there is a bit too much, and probably the main ding that I have against it is there's a bit too much fan service. There's a bit too much reliance on knowing what happened in games like 5, which not that many people in the West played, even though they've been remastered here. There are characters who reappear who you're like, oh shit, that character, if you've played those games. But if you haven't played those games, you're like, oh, that's a big, tough-looking guy. Okay. And those moments will be a bit lost on you if you haven't played them. But then there's also some really good bits that set up the franchise in a way that it can move on from Kiryu.
Right.
There's stuff that focuses on the characters from the Judgment series, which is the detective spin-off. And there's a whole side quest with them, and that's a really nice like look into the future of the franchise. There's a lot of times where you see where they hint at things of where the universe is going with new factions and things like that. It does a good job at, like, it's not necessarily a great introduction, but it's a great place to start for the games going forward. It would have been really nice if there was a recap on it.
Sure.
That was something that even I was like, I would have liked a recap, because I haven't played 6 yet. 6 is the one that I haven't played yet. So I was like, oh, how did he wind up working with this, like, political faction? And that's basically all the ending of 6. And they do explain those, but it could do with more in detail recaps.
Let's read some of these other reviews here. Michael Hyam says it's a 8 out of 10, and so there I was sitting in front of my TV watching Gaiden's ending, crying like a damn baby over the hardships of a fictional man again. And I know those who've also been on this ride over the years will feel me on this. Gaiden may be a brief excursion that occasionally leaves the full potential of its supporting cast on the table, and often relies on remixing ideas from the series' past. But with enough new features to make it combat exciting and a buffet of high quality side content, it's still some of the most fun I've had with an RGG game. Most importantly, I was just happy to be in Kiryu's shoes again for another emotional story and to brace myself for what lies ahead for the beloved series. And then Lex Luddy gives it a 9 out of 10. Having now completed every side mission, sub-story, and an objective in a little over 24 hours, I can only hope that Ryoga Gotoku learns from this game and works on more bite-sized spin-offs, fleshing out the rest of this universe roster of lovable weirdos, gallant heroes, and snarling villains. Lexi, this is where I'm at.
There's some really good characters in this game.
Yeah, I like the characters that I've always encountered in these games. A bite-sized version to, like, again, whet my appetite sounds very appealing to me right now. And I think, I mean, clearly they have their path forward, right? Where the Like a Dragon's core series now is going to have this cool turn-based combat, a new hero they're probably going to stick with for several more games. And then these are my assumptions as someone who's not played a lot of these. And then they have the Judgment games. Maybe they'll do some more stuff with Judgment. I have no idea. And then they have these side stories, right? And then there's occasionally some other stuff thrown in there, like the Ishin games, where they're going back and bringing stuff that never came out here. So they have a lot of chances to do different things with these games. So if, like, one of them is this smaller side story that does revel in the franchise's past, to me, that seems not just acceptable, but like a really good way to fill out this sphere of what Yakuza could be.
Yeah, I think in the context of there's going to be 3 Yakuza games in the next, or within the span of about 18 months, with
right.
Ishin, this, and Infinite Wealth, and like each of those offering very different things. And feeling like very different experiences. It feels like the series is quite varied in a way that it wasn't in the past, where you would be waiting a year or 2 years for a game that was very iterative. They've done a really good job at creating new niches for it. I think something that, like, you will probably appreciate is some of the side content. The Sega arcade games that are in there are really well emulated. They're all done by M2.
Is this the one that has the games that haven't been emulated by Sega before? Some of the, like,
yes, so it has what they call Arcade Racing Classics 2, which is basically it's Daytona 2. And that's really fun. It had another motorbike combat one, which I've lost now. And it has Fighting Vipers and Sonic the Fighters, which I can now tell you as a fact is a bad game.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's a Sonic game.
There's also a bunch of Master System games, which they're Master System games, but it's cool that they're there.
Yeah, I mean, it just fills out, it gives the game more character. I still like that stuff.
Like, I'm not going to sit down and play Flicky for any longer than I already have, but
hey, but respect the Flicky. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
These are Model 2 games, and I don't think Sega has done a lot with Model 2 so far. Boy, that is exciting. I love Sega arcade games. That's just where they're at their best. And Daytona 2 is fantastic. All right, you know what? We got a lot more to get to. So real quick, just to wrap up the facts here. When is this out?
This is out tomorrow, I'm pretty sure. Game Pass.
It is on Game Pass, right? Is it on Game Pass PC?
Pass,
I think it is.
Yes. If you have Game Pass, it's worth at least trying out. See if you enjoy it. The combat's fun, and even just from pure, like, brainless, just get through the main story, enjoy those combat set pieces that they have. It's a good time.
Yeah, I'm gonna This is one I'm throwing on the Ally, right? Because that's easy to play Game Pass games on there.
And
The game should
most
run.
of those games, most of those recent games have been Steam Deck verified, so it should run.
It should run well. I mean, those handhelds are always more powerful than I give them credit for. Even though I've used them a bunch, I'm like, man, this is going to be fine on there. It's like, well, this is better than fine. This sometimes runs like well over 30 frames per second. So, yeah, I'll be checking this out on there. Excellent. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we get back, there's some news about The Last of Us multiplayer. That PS5 Slim got broken down. We'll talk about all of that right after this. And we're back. We're talking The Last of Us multiplayer. Director confirms, yes, I'm still working on that game. This comes from Vicky Blake at Eurogamer. Naughty Dog game director Vinette Agarwal has confirmed that they are still working on that game. And that's a quote. Agarwal has yet to follow up their message or respond to any of the dozens of comments left on the post, but it should be good news nonetheless for any player worried that, as some purport, the multiplayer game has been quietly canned. Earlier this year, Naughty Dog shared an update on its Last of Us multiplayer title, saying it has realized what is best for the game is to give it more time. It also teased a brand new single-player experience currently in the works. This is just a tweet. He talked about, hey, I beat Mario. I 100%ed it. Mario Wonder. That was awesome. I died 300 times, and what a good game. And then somehow, I think because, I don't know, he must not tweet very often. The fact that he popped his head up, he knew he was going to get asked about this, said, yes, I'm still working on that game. I would probably hesitate to get people's hopes up too high with this, Lexi, right? Where it's like, hey, a director still being on a project, even if that project is on the shelf or on hold or paused in some way, that still seems perfectly reasonable to me. That's how that would work. Like, the director's not going to be like unless it is fully canceled, which I know some people are saying it seems like it might be, but we never got that confirmed or anything like that. It being on hold and the director needing to still be overseeing some elements of that, because if things pick up again, there needs to be someone in charge to pick up, to give direction. I don't know. I think that this is likely the case, and at the same time, I'm not expecting this game to be in full development at the moment either. How do you read this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a thing that goes on a lot with development. If you go and watch, there's a good Did You Know Gaming video that just went up about Rare's cancel games over the years.
Yes.
And a lot of them, it's like, oh, we took them to Nintendo. Nintendo looked at them and said, no thanks. And then the person who was leading that project was told, hey, you can still work on this in the background. One of them was told, hey, you can work on this on the background, and if you can get it running on a DS, we'll publish it ourselves. He couldn't, and that's why it never came out. And there's a lot of things in the games industry where it is hard to kill your darlings. You've put a lot of time and effort into a game like this. Unless it is straight up cancelled, why would you step away from all that work that you have put into it? Also, it sounds like, that game was in a pretty not terrible space. It just isn't coming together in the way that a live service needs to.
Right, exactly.
The word always was, hey, this just doesn't have enough content in it, and Bungie don't think that you'll be able to support it in the way that you have to support a game like this. If you've basically made a full game, or you've made however much of a game, and that's your only problem, even the most skeptical of CEOs would be like, that's a big thing to cancel. That's a lot of work to cancel. That's a lot of money down the drain.
Right. And it's, I think we always get hung up on things being canceled. And to us, that sounds very diffident. That sounds very much like, okay, well, that's it. So now they've scrapped everything and they're starting over, working on something else. And that's just never how it works. I mean, the thing to point to is, hey, yeah, Blizzard canceled Titan, and all of that work got turned into Overwatch, or most of that work that transitioned over to a new project. So it's like, in a way, no, it wasn't canceled. It just had a normal development hiccup, and it was a pretty big one, but it's like a normal thing to be like, hey, we're making this thing. It's not working. Let's just carry forward our momentum, be like water and move around this stone in our way. And now we're going to be shaped into this different thing, but we're still carrying forward all that work we did. That's almost certainly what's happening here. I agree with you when he's like, yeah, they're not going to abandon this work, and the game sounds like it probably played very well. There's been a history of Naughty Dog making very fun multiplayer modes that people really like. There is going to be a spot for that work to turn into either a dedicated multiplayer mode for the next, Last of Us, or turn into something else. And
I also I don't think Sony particularly like the idea of Naughty Dog being a one-game studio, of canceling a game and then just being like, okay, you're only allowed work on the Last of Us Part 3 or whatever. You have to get this one game out. So I can totally see them saying like, hey, listen, if this isn't working, this team still has to figure something else out, and they still have to remain as a separate team, because if not, why are we employing all these people for this one project?
yes, and it's I think it is definitely the kind of thing where you can fall into a bunch of pits of like, hey, we can't give up on this because we put all this work in there. I mean, the sunk cost fallacy, but the reality is, it's like, well, I mean, you can abandon all this work if it was good money after bad, but it's software and it's art, and you can keep being creative and finding new solutions to these old problems. And it doesn't have to look like the solutions you set out with. You could be more flexible, and that's been to a lot of games' benefits. I mean, the little things we've heard about, like how Yoshi's Island got made. Like, Yoshi's Island was a completely different game when they started making it with a completely different character. And, they just keep plugging away at it and plugging away and coming up with these new things. And they're like, suddenly like, hey, this would be good as a Yoshi game. And it was
still bad when it came out.
And it was still one of the best games ever made when it came out. Exactly, Lexi. I think I heard you right.
Yeah.
And then, so we'll see. I don't think we're going to hear about this game anytime soon necessarily, though. So even if it is good, I think they'll probably take their time spooling something up slowly as they figure out what it will turn into. And I think that's probably this person's job, Agarwal. Yeah, Agarwal. They probably are the main person still working on this. They probably have a small team, but you need a huge team to make this stuff happen. And that, like, part of getting this done will be like having a project, a vision that makes sense to put a bunch of people on. And that's probably where that project's at right now. All right. The PS5 Slim is not that much smaller, according to first teardown videos. This is from Jordan Midler at VGC. The first teardown videos of the new PS5 Slim model have been posted online. One video features content creator Dave2D taking the system apart and comparing it to the base model. Among the comparisons, perhaps the most surprising is his claim that the Slim machine is not that much smaller than the original. Dave2D also commented that the top panels feature a glossy finish. In contrast, the disk drive portion of the machine is a matte finish, similar but not identical to that of the original PS5. There's some specifications here about weight and stuff, things that we've heard before, and it's in kilograms, so who can even make sense of that? But
mystery.
This is the kind of thing where I'm like, it still looks small enough to me that it will make a difference if you're really bothered by the size of the PS5. And to the point where it's like, it looks normal now. I don't think it doesn't look like some actual real quote unquote slim console, but the PS5 Slim looks like, oh yeah, you put that out, that's just a normal system in terms of size and scale, where the PS5 was like, holy, that's a honking motherfucker right there. So
I love the idea of you just looking at your PS5 just going like, why can't you be normal?
Be normal. And then it's doing that screeching thing from the meme. It's like, yes, my PS5 will not be normal. I'm still not hung up on this. I like the PS5 enough, and I have no intention of getting the Slim to replace the one I have. But how do you feel about this? Does this dampen any enthusiasm for this?
I mean, as someone that likes how ugly the current PS5 is, like,
same.
I don't give a shit. Like, okay, it's the exact same console, just like slightly cheaper for them to manufacture. I'm sure that's all that this console actually is. There's no real difference to the consumer apart from the disk drive stuff, which has been documented very well as why that's not a great thing for certain bits of preservation. But even then, that, like, there's still original PS5s where you don't have the problem of it having to connect to the internet for the disk drive verification. So, like, every time I hear about the PS5 Slim, I'm like, okay, why are we reporting on this? Like this is the most nothing news ever, that it's not as small as people want it to be, but like it only exists because Sony wanted to make a cheaper model anyway,
Yeah.
a model that was cheaper for them. I think if people were actually going to get angry about anything, it's the fact that they like upped the price of the cheaper one by $50.
Yep.
And no one seemed to notice.
They're saving money
but,
and
you
they're
know,
charging more. It's kind of becoming a classic move recently, not just for Sony, but like, you know, Nintendo definitely saved money on the OLEDs in the long term compared to what they were probably paying when they first launched the Switch, and charge $50 more for that thing. So Nintendo's doing it, Sony's doing it. I know the OLED screens are more expensive, but not that much more expensive. So, and it speaks to the idea that, hey, consoles are not going to go down in price all that much going forward for throughout these generations. So, yeah. Hey, we'll see if we get our hands on a PS5 Slim at some point and talk about it and see what we think. But beyond that, it's like, okay, fair enough. Not that small. I think we could tell early on it wasn't going to be some huge earth-shaking revision in the first place. Fortnite had its biggest day ever with 44 million players following original map's return. This is from Chris Scullion at VGC. Fortnite enjoyed its biggest 24-hour period in history over the weekend, thanks to its Fortnite OG event. According to a tweet posted on the game's official Twitter account, the game saw record player counts on Saturday, November 4th. Way to start things off with a big bang, reads the tweet, which was posted on Sunday. We're blown away by the response to Fortnite OG. Yesterday was the biggest day in Fortnite's history, with over 44.7 million players jumping in and 102 million hours of play. To all Fortnite players, OG and new, thank you. That's a lot. Apparently it peaked at 6.1 or nearly 6.2 million concurrent players. That's a very big number. Boy, it's 2018 again all of a sudden, and it's bigger than it was even back then.
I was going to say, that's roughly the population of the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland combined.
Exactly.
That's everyone in the country playing the game at once. But, like, this is presented as, like, oh, we're doing so good. But whenever I see this, I'm like, oh, they're so fucking cooked. The only way they can get, like, their numbers back up is by doing the old thing that people still like. And like, what happens when this season ends and they go back to modern stuff? It's like the WoW Classic thing of like, hey, WoW isn't doing the numbers it was doing anymore. What if we just gave you the old shit you liked and you got nostalgic about it? And like, that's how they get people in. And then they don't stay around, because why would you stay around for something that you had plenty of before? Like, you're going to go back in to get that hit of nostalgia, but once that wears off, you're like, okay, I've seen all this now. And
they are going to end every season, I guess. Or at least this is what someone mentioned this to me. They're going to end every season going forward with this OG event, where they're going to go back to the old map, and that's not going to have the same effect the second, third, fourth time. I don't think.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I'm sure it will still be a very popular thing every time they do it. But this feels like, oh, you shot your shot here. This was something you can kind of do, you know, once and have this effect. I think we'll see, but it feels like this is like the one time you could really pull this card, and now you've done it. And what do you do with this momentum? Hey, it's Fortnite. It's going to be fine, but we'll see.
The question is how do they retain people that have come back to it?
Yeah,
because that's the thing all these live services have struggled with, is people slowly dripping away. And it's the thing that like Destiny has struggled with, is people slowly fall off, and then getting them back into the game is nigh on impossible, because it's just so dense. So scaling things back and making it easy to get back into it by saying like, oh, this is just the bare bones version of it again, like that's a smart move. But then the question is, how do you get them to stay there once you make everything super fucking complicated again and add web swinging and add Attack on Titan bullshit? Like, how do you get those people that were there because it was simpler again to stick around for the more complicated shit?
Meanwhile, the Embracer COO confirms departure following rough year for the games giant. This is from Andy Robinson at VGC, and shout out to VGC today. I was running behind and got most of my stories from there. They continue to do great work. Embracer Group's chief operating officer has confirmed his departure from the company. Igil Strunk shared the news on Monday and claimed he'd left the holding company, which owns many game developers such as Gearbox and Crystal Dynamics, last week. In June, Embracer announced the appointment of an interim COO, which would be filled by Saber Interactive boss Matthew Karch. I don't know if that means in June. But, you know, let's keep reading. The COO is typically the second in command, reporting to the CEO, and handles the daily business of operations of a company. Last week, I left Embracer Group as COO, and it's with mixed feelings. I am parting ways with this global company phenomenon rooted in Karlstad, Sweden. Strunke wrote on Monday. On one hand, I'm grateful for having had the chance to work with the one-of-a-kind CEO Lars Wingefors and all the other amazing colleagues, which are too many to mention, which I will be sad to leave. On the other hand, I'm excited about the opportunities that lie ahead, starting and building my own company, Strunk Games. Strunk's history with Embracer spans 2 4-year stints, 2011 to 2014 and 2019 to 2023. In his statement, the former COO acknowledged his challenging final year at the firm. Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, another 4-year stint here in a couple of years. Hey, congratulations on starting your own thing. Boy, that's wild that you're going to start it now, especially I guess getting while the getting's good, I suppose, but are you going to be able to then be like, well, you know, I did such a good job over Embracer, come make games with me? That seems challenging, but someone's giving him money to do this. That's pretty wild.
He has a knack for getting money out of people.
I suppose that's a good thing.
Maybe he doesn't even need to like make any games from that studio. He just needs to get the investment. Like, that's all.
Yeah, and the story doesn't say anything about like where the investment came from. I don't think Strunke's confirmed that. You know, maybe investing some of his own money, but also I think it's likely that getting investment from somewhere. That money still is out there to some effect, but it's just not like it was. So the idea that it's going to Strunke here.
What IP is he gonna buy for his new company?
He's gonna go back to Embracer and buy back SpongeBob and just make it a SpongeBob factory. There you go. That's the real money.
SpongeBob and Gex. Just do a crossover game.
Yes, that's the SpongeBob Gex universe. Embracer still a mess. How do you feel about like? Do you think we're over the hump with Embracer? Or do you think there's more bad news to come?
Oh, there's way more fucking bad news.
That's where I'm at too, yeah.
That's always the vibe I've always found from Embracer, and it's pretty limited, but it mainly comes from Gamescom, where they have a big showing every year. And in 2022, they basically took up an entire floor of Gamescom in the business area, which are like their big fucking floors in the halls. Except each and every one of their publishing labels were separate booths. Like you know what these press booths look like. You know, like Activision will have one or Sega will have one, and they're all set up independently. But usually, if a company's owned by another company, they'll put them in the same place. Embracer owned, you know, they had Deep Silver separate. They had what's their other publishing labels, but they have them all separately laid out, and you would be going to them and you realize like, oh, these are all operating as separate entities, and like it's like looking at European medieval Europe and it being like, oh, these are like fiefdoms and everyone's operating independently and taking resources from each other, and it's kind of a fucking mess. Like, there's no actual stability around this whole thing. I think that like as soon as you the thing that tells you everything you need to know about Embracer is they own a PR company that doesn't do PR for all of their games.
Yep.
So why do they own a PR company? It's wild. I've had situations where I've gone to Embracer meetings and it's like, oh, here's a person from one PR company, here's a person from another PR company who is also there. And I'm like, why do you have two PR companies working on one booth? Like, why would you hire out two? This person is just here making coffee when people come in.
You know, like, that's sometimes happening when it's like, oh, this is for the Europe zone and this is for North America. But that's not what was happening there, right? That was just...
No, it was like the same European projects, the same Gamescom event. And it's like you have multiple people running these events. Like, it's very rare that you will have a situation where one company doesn't do all of its PR through the same PR outlet. And the idea that, like, hey, Deep Silver are going to a different team than Gearbox are it makes it a fucking mess for press, because it makes getting in contact with people an absolute nightmare. And sometimes you'll have a situation where you're like, oh, can I see, like, the other Embracer Group games? And they're like, no, you can't, because we're not working on them. And it just creates this whole disorganization on a massive scale that, like, you can't... Like, that's just a very simple thing, but it scales up to the entire company. And I have no idea how the fuck they're still operating in the way that they are. I've always been baffled by Embracer the same way you have.
Yep.
And every time I learn something new about them, I'm like, oh, it's like, you know, that scene in Succession where he's like, you're not serious people.
Yes.
It's like that, but with the company. It's like, you're not a
It
serious
doesn't feel like
company.
a serious company. Yes. Instead, it feels like there was a publisher in the industry. Joel Strunke. I got nothing. I was trying to do a SpongeBob joke, but it's nothing. It's nothing. This is going to end up being a real big mess. It feels like it's going to be, and it's going to not just a mess, but like a fire where people are going to get a lot of strays because they just ended up getting acquired by a publisher that does not have a vision. And
it doesn't feel like they're bracing for it. It doesn't feel like they're trying to enact any changes that would add some more organization to the organization itself. It doesn't seem like there's any... Like, the cuts that they are making are baffling. When you look at stuff like Gearbox Publishing, which was putting out a bunch of really solid indie games that were doing quite well on Steam charts, and then they laid off almost the entire Gearbox Publishing team. Like, that is a section that is clearly growing. Why are those the people you are cutting? It just seems like a bunch of people who run hedge funds but don't run video game companies, running a video game company. And they've managed to get away with it for this long because they've had all this money coming in. But like, now that the money stopped, they're like, oh shit, we actually have to run this company now. What the fuck do we do?
Meanwhile, over at Blizzard, they say that they've been talking about bringing World of Warcraft to consoles all the time. This is from Jordan Midler at VGC. Blizzard has said that it considers bringing its seminal MMO World of Warcraft to consoles all the time. Speaking to Games Radar at BlizzCon 2023, Holly Longdale, the vice president and executive producer of World of Warcraft, said that it talks about the prospect all the time. It's a complicated question, Longdale said. For a console audience, the approachability is likely going to be different. While in the past, and this is no longer a quote, while in the past MMOs of World of Warcraft's size were more at home on PC due to computing power, some of the largest MMOs today are extremely popular on consoles, such as Final Fantasy XIV. Right now, we're focused on the World Soul Saga, but if that comes up, then we'll re-examine things. But man, we've got enough to deal with right now. We've got these 3 expansions, and we are so excited about them.
That could be what you could label everything with Activision Blizzard. Just, man, we have a lot to deal with. Right
I'm going to be busy that day. But yeah, of course, it would be very insincere to say that we're not like, of course, we're talking about that. She also mentioned that like it's not going to be a problem for controller. They say that they probably have a good solution for that, so they feel comfortable about making that jump, and it's not about any of these other issues you might bring up. They're like, no, we feel good about bringing it to console. It's just a matter of like, is now the right time, and we haven't needed to do that. Just real quick on this, if they do that, do you think that there's any sort of link between a World of Warcraft subscription and Game Pass subscriptions?
Maybe, but like, this just feels like the wrong time. Like, it feels like 10 years too late. It feels like, who is going to get into this game all these years later? When
I think that's why it makes some sense to me, because I think the reason not to make an Xbox Game Pass subscription a World of Warcraft subscription is you think, well, then, you know, you're getting all this money for World of Warcraft subscriptions. There's still probably 1 million people subscribed to that game, like even at its lowest, like it's around that level. So it's like, well, you don't want to give up all that money. I just don't think the Venn diagram of World of Warcraft subscribers overlaps too much with Game Pass subscribers. So the idea would be like, you're just getting a bigger number overall. And now every Game Pass subscriber can go and try World of Warcraft and feel like, oh, I have a subscription to this. I should use that. So, oh, hello, turkey. Gobble, gobble, gobble. There you go. Bringing in the camera. So yeah, but at the same time, I think you're right that it's not the right time. It's not it probably wouldn't make that much of a move on the needle, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this brings up a larger thing with Blizzard. I kept an eye on a lot of BlizzCon this weekend, and everything I saw out of that company seems like a fucking mess. To put it very politely, you have the Overwatch League, or Overwatch itself, doing a big, like, them being the first game they talk about after the opening presentation, and Mike Ybarra being up on stage talking about, you know, inclusion, diversity, how the game is for everyone, how they're working on getting more people involved in the game, how much they love esports, all the while they killed the Overwatch League, and now apparently they're looking at selling like the contract to the Saudi Arabian government. And it's like, okay, you're clearly just full of shit. There's no other way to put it.
Yep.
The team that won the Overwatch League World Cup, which was Team Saudi Arabia, had been shit-talking a trans shoutcaster during their qualifiers, and they weren't particularly punished for it. They were just allowed to continue in the brackets. And then you look at stuff like how Diablo 4's season is being received. That just seems like a game for no one other than the people who are really mad about Diablo 3 having too much color in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the only type of person that game seems designed around. And it seems like a live service game that, like, just doesn't have any... That game, when I played it, for more than any other game, and I've played, like, everything from Destiny to a lot of other live service games, it was the quickest I've gone from, like, okay, this is interesting, to, like, why the fuck am I bothering making this number go up? Like, what, to what end? To what end am I doing anything here? And you look at World of Warcraft, and that's been dwindling for years. It's doing good expansions at the moment, and people are in a good mood with it, but it's not growing. Like, the whole vibe that you get from Blizzard is that each and every one of their games has stopped growing, and they currently don't have any other games on the books. And they are trying desperately to find ways to monetize the games that are left there. You see it in, like, the $35 Overwatch skins. You see it in the way that they make everything a grind in Diablo 4 so that you have to keep putting time and money into it. Like, those games don't seem sustainable or healthy because those franchises don't seem sustainable or healthy.
Yep. I mean, I think that we are going to see Blizzard have to go through some... I don't know, being treated well by Microsoft for a few years before it can get some of its confidence back a little bit. I think it feels a little bit like, hey, under Activision, we couldn't just be Blizzard. And in some ways, you don't want to just be Blizzard because that was a toxic workplace. So that had to change as well. And that's, Microsoft has a reputation that's very strongly trying to maintain. So that stuff won't be tolerated. But then when it comes to the making games side of stuff, you hope that Blizzard can regain some of that mojo, and you see them trying to do that in fits and starts. I think Diablo 4 turned out better than it could have, and I still think I agree with you that it seems like it hasn't fully reclaimed its place as like, well, this is one of the best games, and the people who love Diablo are showing up.
Is totally a game where you look at it and you're like, oh, the team that came in here and finished it and made this like quite technically sound weren't the team that started it, weren't the team with the vision. But you're like, oh, this is a game that was fixed by a different team.
Yep. Jan just said his partner told him about ninth graders talking about WoW. And I do think WoW seems like it might have like a RuneScape classic sort of pop here in a little bit, where it like a new generation is going to discover WoW. I think that could happen. We'll see. We'll see if Blizzard's able to capitalize on that. But I think a lot of like younger streamers are playing it, and I think that's really helping the game. But we
all know that the kids are not all right anyway. So,
oh no, like, definitely not. Yeah. I mean, she likes Sonic, well, of course. IO Interactive wants to make more than one Bond game. This is from Nicholas Wallen at Game Reactor. Danish Hitman developer IO Interactive is working on a new James Bond game, and it will not be based on any of the Ian Fleming books, because who can read? But will be a completely new story about the legendary agent's background. It now also seems that they have plans to make more than one game, and that it will be something of a sequel. In an interview with Edge Magazine, IO Interactive CEO Hakan Abrak suggests that they hope to do just that. Hakan Abrak said, "I would love players to look back on multiple Bond games by IO and go, wow, that was quite a journey." I hope they can get to this point. I want the world for IO Interactive. I think that would be a good name for a Bond game, by the way. But I want the world for them. I want them just everything to work out. And I think they're the kind of studio that can tell a story with a character over multiple games. Because by the time, like with Hitman 2, after Hitman 2016, I was like, man, they're actually doing some emotional stuff with Agent 47. And I was mostly happy with where that went in Hitman 3. It wasn't great, but it was like, oh, this is pretty good. They set out with that in mind and still have all the great gameplay on top of that. That could be a real fun series. How do you feel about multiple Bond games from IO Interactive?
IO's fucking awesome. I'll play anything that they try, even if like I don't stick with the Hitman games. As long as some people, I respect them and love them so much from a technical point of view of just like, oh, these are incredibly well designed video games. I'm super excited to see them try to do different things, and if it makes them money and it lets them keep doing weird shit, like, more power to them.
Real quick, I didn't put it down here, but there was that story that Insomniac has confirmed that going forward, Miles Morales is their main Spider-Man, and of course there was like Spider-Man weirdos who were like, I don't like the sound of that, give me back my Peter Parker. I don't think that means they're taking away your Peter Parker. Like, let's be clear, Peter Parker's going to be in the game, but the way that story wraps up, it's like Miles Morales taking his place as the number one defender of New York, and sort of and someone who can like help Peter Parker when Peter Parker can't handle all his shit either. And it's like, well, that's I think it's an idea of like pass the torch, and that doesn't mean that Peter Parker has to go retire and we never see him again. I also think it's unlikely a video game sequel does less than the game before it. Now, maybe they do a Donkey Kong Country 2 thing where it's like, okay, this one had Peter Parker and Miles Morales. The next one will be Miles Morales and someone else. But I think it's very likely that you'll still play as both in the next games. It's just that Miles Morales will be the main focus, and then Peter Parker's story will be the B story, as opposed to the way it worked this last one, where it's like Miles Morales was kind of started as the B story, and maybe by the end he had worked his way up to the A story. But I don't know. How do you see it?
To be fair, Grubb, to be fair, it's totally unlike comic book fans to use like something like this as a scapegoat to be shitty and racist about something.
Yeah, that's
like,
I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, of course.
Yeah, they'd never do that. No, like fucking Peter Parker is extremely well recognized as the face and name of Spider-Man. They will keep that character around. What the fuck are you on about? It doesn't matter how, even if he fucking died, Peter Parker would be all over the fucking next game. Like, I don't know what the fuck you're on about.
Yep.
There's a lot of fucking Spider-Men. You'll be fine.
This comment here says that Miles Morales. I'm going to make a bad joke, and I'm not going to do it. I abandoned ship. All right, let's go here. Let's get to the poll.
Almost got janceled again.
All right, let's go. Which giant bomb staffer is most likely to earn a knighthood? Let's see, 5% said Jeff Bakalar, and that's my vote, actually, even though I voted for Dan Reichert. 14% said Jan Ochoa, 33% said Lucy James. I think that's the Britishness.
Lucy. Lucy is the smart money, like.
Yes, I think Lucy's actually the most likely, but 48% said Dan Reichert.
I would be confident that Lucy would turn it down.
Yeah, she's like, no thanks, I'm good. Dan Reichert would absolutely take it, though.
Dan would jump on it. Yeah,
yes,
he'd be like, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah, he does not care. So 48% say...
it in the tweet about it and be like, yeah.
We'll find out.
Give me a free medal.
And he'll chew on it, of course. All right, we got a new poll coming up here that we'll talk about on Wednesday's Game Mess Mornings. But first, Lexi, why don't you tell people where they can find you, what you have going on, all that good stuff?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at basically Lexi, both words spelled with an I. You can check out the website I run, Start Menu, which is a website for young people or people trying to break into the games industry. We're doing a Winter Spectacular, as I mentioned at the top of the show. We're going to get some guests on. We'll have some fun. We'll do some fun shit. We'll do some advice pieces. We'll do some serious things. It's always a good, fun time of the year. You can read some of my work at Shack News most recently, where I did my Like a Dragon Gaiden review, and I interviewed Sam Lake, which was a lot of fun. I also reviewed Alan Wake 2 on Start Menu itself, and I'll be around a bit more every now and again. Yeah.
Excellent. Let's see, couple house clean things. Like I said, we'll have the poll results on Wednesday's show on Giant Bomb. Speaking of Giant Bomb, I will probably try to wrap up Mortal Kombat 1 this week, maybe today. Timing will again depend on what I have going on in my personal life, and I have to run kids around and stuff like that. We'll see. But ideally, that would happen today, and maybe we even finished it. We'll see. And then for the rest of the week, we should have a B Light Club, but we might mix something else in there, depending. It's a shorter week on the back end. We're not working Friday because of Veterans Day, so things will move around a little bit. But hey, Bombcast tomorrow, and then Bombcast Revengeance, which is on the same feed. The first episode went out on Friday. that'll happen this week. Might just happen on a
That was a good show. That was a good show on Friday.
Yeah, it was a fun, good proof of concept, and I feel really happy with it. It's one that was like, oh great, it's awesome to be able to get Lucy and Tam on here. It's great to be able to have just a more freewheeling conversation, just kind of talk about games a little bit more, especially if everyone's like, man, I wish I would have said that about Alan Wake when I was on the Bombcast. I just forgot. And so, well, now I have another chance to do that. So just all around, we're really happy with it. Definitely give that a listen. And then vote. So I think you can vote tomorrow in the United States. So get out there, do that. There's a lot of issues that are worth voting on, especially in Ohio. Vote yes on issue 1, I think, and yes on issue 2, so we can get legal weed. Yay! Lexi.
Also, go check out Chris Bratt's new video where he interviews Tam. That looks really good. I haven't watched it yet,
Where's
but it
that
just
at?
got released. People Make Games.
Excellent.
They interviewed Tamor, and I think that is a really cool thing to do.
I do too.
Because Tamor's rad.
Tamor is very rad. So is People Make Games. So check that out. All right, Lexi, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games and for helping me put the rundown together. I really appreciate that.
Nice.
Thank you all for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye. All right, we've done it. Still hot mic'd.